All right, good morning from Strasbourg. We made it yesterday. We didn't vlog because we spent almost 6 hours on trains, 3 switches, 1 bus. But it wasn't too bad, actually. Pretty simple to navigate. And then we got in late last night, and then we did some laundry. Had a quick dinner at like a wrap place, and then stopped by a like Asian fusion place for a drink. And I think it's a oiza. It's like a little dumpling type thing.
And I had the best miso soup I've ever had.
Yeah, which is needed. It's definitely chilly here. I think the winter is finally stepping in. But this morning we grabbed breakfast from the hotel, and now we just came to the tourism office to pick up an audio guide. So we're going to wander our way around and learn the city today. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. We're right in the square with the cathedral. It is Sunday, so the cathedral is closed right now, so we're going to skip that and come to the cathedral at the end. But so far, Strasbourg is like amazingly beautiful. It's like this city that is surrounded on all sides by a small river, which like I guess provided natural defenses. But it's really cool. Like the old town is very old town. It's not been modernized for the most part. You can walk anywhere you want. There's a few cars that stumble through now and then, but just a lot of people and bikes. But it's really nice. So let's go ahead and do the audio tour and see what this is all about. All right, so we just started the tour, and we're actually in Cathedral Square still, but there's 2 stops that we made here. One is the house kind of over to my left, and one is the one right behind me. The one over to my left is probably the oldest home here that was home to very famous merchants, or the richest merchants in town. It was constructed first in like the 1500s. Then the house right behind me, which is like kind of the standard Germanesque look, was home to a bread market. And then as we turn, we made a quick stop here at the church that was originally started to be built in the 1200s, and the spire was finished in the 1400s. But we're going to actually skip the inside because church is going on, and we're going to come back to that later. All right, so I think I'm going to be doing most of the talking on this one because we're sharing one audio guide. And so I listen to it first, and then Kelly listens to it. And so I'm going to do the videos and talk while she listens to the audio guide. But behind me is actually the side nave of the church here. And there's 2 doors they spent a long time talking about that have statues on either side of 2 women. One on the right represents the Old Testament, and she's blindfolded and looks like she's like losing a battle. And then on the other side, she looks triumphant and strong, representing the New Testament. So kind of cool representation there with the statues. And then over in front of me, which is super bright, so I'm not going to spin, is the old Catholic University. So we're going to walk in that next. All right, walking through the gates and listening to the next one. I actually had it wrong. This is not the Catholic University. It's a palace that has been in the city since the 1400s and had a bunch of different uses over time. But I think one of the most famous is this was actually a home of Napoleon for some time. And then after Napoleon, it went through a bunch of different renovations and different owners until eventually it turned into City Hall, and now it's a museum for ceramics and fine art on the 2nd floor. I think we're going to continue through this one and on to the next one, the next stop. I think that these are slowly going to be a little less rapid fire as we're still kind of in the same court as the cathedral. All right, so I've stood here waiting a number of minutes. You can probably still hear them, but I've learned that in Switzerland a few days ago and then here, the church bells rang for a very long time. These probably at least 10 minutes of solid ringing. But nonetheless, we're on a street here that used to be Shoemaker Alley. So all of these old buildings that are nicely preserved were housed by shoemakers in the bottom floor, and they lived above. So this is actually a really beautiful street that is still pretty preserved. I mean, the whole city really is, which is fantastic. So it's good to see. All right, so the next stop on the tour was this house behind me with all the timber. Actually has a shoe on the top for it was a shoemaker's house, but something interesting, a lot of these timber houses are actually able to be dismantled and then moved. So they were considered actual personal property rather than real estate. And a number of these have been moved around the city over time. This one, however, has been stagnant here since the 1400s. So as we continue our tour, we're actually walking over a bridge out of the historical old town, even though everything is still rather old. And something we learned is since this was a free city, they had to be very prepared for famine. And so when we look around at all of these old houses, they have a number of dormer windows on the roofs. And so that's actually where they kept a lot of their excess food and different things up in the attics. And the dormer windows provided a lot of ventilation for them. Which was neat. And then there's also some buildings here on the river they talked about that were either the customs houses that the Romans built to essentially tax things that were going up and down the river. Very similar to Zurich, actually. And then some slaughterhouses and other things. But we're going to continue on, but thought the information about the dormers was pretty cool.
For our next stop on the tour, we actually got a whole bridge just as a number. The bridge behind me is pretty cool. It's from the 1850s, I think, and was actually a breakthrough technology at the time. I think there's one iron beam that's kind of arched, and then it's supported by a bunch of circular, smaller iron beams as it got to the center. So pretty cool that it's been here since the 1850s, and it sounds like it hasn't been destroyed at all. So.
All right, so this area behind us has actually got quite a bit going on. The houses directly behind me are the old wash houses, and you can see some of the awnings that are actually centered out over the water for rinsing. So a little more to my left is the old mill house, and so you can actually see there's some river mills underneath those four arches. And then lastly, all the way to my left, a little difficult to see now, is the lock system where boats went through in order to avoid the waterfall that the mill is taking care of. So. A lot going on in this really beautiful segment. It's very picturesque, and honestly, the whole city has been, but we're going to continue on. Not sure how much you can really hear, but it's actually very interesting. We walked up to the actual lock, and there's a riverboat tour that's actually in it, and it's still working. So this is the way they still manage to get riverboats around the city. So really cool to actually see the locks, and very old locks at that, still in function. All right, we made our way to what's called Petit France, and actually it used to be an old hospital, and it was named that after, I think, that the disease syphilis was brought to France, in which there was debate over where it originated. Everybody else said France, France said everywhere else. But nonetheless, something that we found really interesting is that this used to be a walled city, and so the way that they taxed real estate in the city was on the ground level. So however much physical space your building took up. And you can see behind me a lot of the buildings on the first level, so one level up, actually extend over what the ground level is. And so they kept doing more and more of that to get more space out of what the tax was. And eventually they had to put a limit on how much you can actually overhang the front of your house. But interesting that architectural element was actually for tax purposes. But this is really beautiful. We're going to continue on. So we're now standing on the bridge, which used to be the entrance to the city, more or less. And you can see here by the guard towers that were on the edges of the river. And so they actually took one river and they divided it into three sections. And the three sections ran through different areas of the city. So the first section in front of me, moving a little bit to a quieter place. So the first section here in front of me head to the mills, and the second section into Petit France, into the locks, and the third section around the right-hand side of the city. So pretty neat how they did that. And then what's directly behind me, this building is a lock system, and so it could actually close, which would flood the southern half of the city. And when it did that, it provided an extra round of the defense because it would essentially flood out anybody that was trying to attack the city. So the building itself was enhanced. It's like 19th century, so not the original, but still pretty cool that they kept it there. All right, so we came up on top of that lock system that I was talking about to flood the south side of the city. And something else the tour mentioned that I thought was pretty clever is that if you look down below the guard tower, there's actually holes in the abandonments, and they used to put cannons in those, and it was a way to self-protect, that if somebody did break through this gate system, then they would be absolutely obliterated by all the cannons that were in the walls. And so you can kind of see them all around. They're on all sides, so they could essentially just light them up in this little area right here. So kind of cool defense system. And right now obviously there's no need for all of that, but they've made it very beautiful. All right, so we're wrapping up the tour now. And on our way back to the cathedral, the street that I'm on now is actually called Grand Rue, and it used to be the main street between the water and the living quarters or baronments of the city. So right now it's obviously just a shopping street, which is really cool to see. I think we're going to head back towards the cathedral. But the tour has been really good, but we'll catch up outside of the cathedral once it's done. Final stop of the tour. This was the main square, the main political, social square of the city. Behind me was City Hall, and is still actually the Chamber of Commerce for Strasbourg. But something cool, there is actually a statue here in the square, and it's actually the guy who invented the printing press with mobile letters. So what is, I guess today, really the keyboard. So that's kind of cool, but the buildings are all really neat. Something else that's interesting about Strasbourg is very much like Zurich. There were guilds that around the city. So a guild for most of the major, workmanships, barrel makers, wine makers, beer makers. Each one had a guild. There were 20 such in total, and they all played a very important role in the government for creating the laws and the standards and all the things that came up, which I think is actually a pretty decent way to do things. So that wraps up the tour. Really enjoyed it. Kelly's actually listening to the last bit of it, but I think we're going to be off to find some coffee. Been a chilly morning, and it's almost 1 o'clock now, so the tour took 3 hours all around the Old Town area of the city and the waters. So yeah, really good tour, but I think we need to find some coffee. All right, so we did find some coffee and some lunch, and that place actually ended up being one of the best rated, anyway, pastry or bakeries in the city. So that was nice. But we've hiked across town, and we're now at a park. And so I think we're just gonna walk around here and see what there is to see. Do you know what the park's called?
It's Parc de la Orangerie. I think like the Orangery Park. So lots of flowers, trees, walking paths, supposedly a boating pond. We'll see. Yeah.
So I think the plan is just to see this, and then we'll kind of walk through any remains of Old Town this afternoon before having a super local dinner. We got reservations, thankfully, so we should be all set. But yeah, I think that's the plan for the rest of the day, so we're just going to enjoy it. It's rather bitter, cold, and windy tonight, so we're gonna keep this one simple. But we just had dinner at this restaurant here behind us underneath a hotel, and we're actually right in the heart of things down here. Traditional French cooking. We both did a set course. I started with an onion pie, and Kelly started with a salad.
It was more like cheese with some lettuce on the side.
Yeah.
But it was really good.
My onion pie was almost like a cheese quiche with onion, and served with a small salad. And then we both got this chicken dish, which was like 1 chicken breast and 2 chicken wings and this like cream sauce with spätzle, which they called noodles. Was really good. Definitely interesting. Like not like things that we'd have at home for sure. And we both had a slice of homemade pie for dessert. We think that it's pear pie.
I think it was brandied pears.
Brandied pears,
Yeah.
perhaps. I don't know. She only spoke French, really. So I just saw pie and was like, sure, pie sounds good. But it was a good set menu, and honestly, the prices were super reasonable. It was only $28 for 3 courses. Really good food. Really enjoyed it. The ambiance was nice. It was finally warm down there. We haven't been warm all day.
Yeah.
So yeah, really good. Not sure what we're gonna do tomorrow. We got a few things that we might do. Maybe a trip to Alsace, which is really close to where we are, wine region. Maybe a little bit more exploring around Strasbourg, but we'll see. But for now, good night.